I guess I'll just start by saying that it is May 10th, 2023, and this is part of a series we're starting to capture an oral history of High Hopes. And we're starting out by particularly trying to focus on the beginnings of the organization. And I'm here with Jeb Embree today. And so, Jeb, one of the first things I was wondering was, how did you first hear about High Hopes? When did you first hear? Well, and as we've discussed, it wasn't High Hopes, it was
L.C. Vera.
And when did you, so Lower Connecticut
Valley Equestrian Riding Association.
Okay. So when did you first hear, and how did you first hear of it?
Early part of 1982, we were invited to go to a picnic. And in those days, they used to have basically one picnic a year, and just to meet other people who were there. And of course, in the early days, you had Sis and Gould. They were real drivers of the whole thing, and Frank and Grace Hamilton, Steve and Sally Aubrey, Judy and Dick Lightfoot, and also Stu and June Hotchkiss.
And they invited you to a picnic.
A picnic.
Yeah. And did they tell you what you were going to a picnic
for?
Yeah, or were you, or did they know?
I'd known Stu for a long time from sailing.
Okay.
I'd done a lot of sailing with him. And so they had a very late child, which turned out to be one of the children that would need High Hopes, basically. The first picnic we went to, which I think might have been one of the first ones back in 82, and it was on a farm up in 82. And it was just just sort of hot dogs and hamburgers and beer, and we talked about various things. A couple of the horses were there and the riders, and so it was nice. It was very chummy and interesting. And then each year they would have another one, and then they began having the concerts in the meadow, and those were pretty special. We used to have the New Haven Symphony come out. They used to do it for quite a reasonable sum, and so that was and there was an auction of various items, and a real fundraiser.
And Jeb, when and how did you and Diane make that jump from being picnic goers to being volunteers?
Well, it was just sort of an automatic transition, and you were sort of part of the groups, if you will, and so you all sort of pitched in to do what you could. Yeah. So it kept it kept going, and we had some wonderful. It was originally the first concerts were out on the Lightfoot's farm, and
so out on Joshua Town Road line.
Yeah, way out with the Indians there.
Yeah.
And so that was quite an evening, and they always played the William Tell Overture, and it was really it was a fun time.
And it wasn't just playing the overture. There was another.
Oh, we had the canon. Oh yeah.
Because did you hold the title as one of the cannoneers?
Oh yeah.
And would you mind explaining a little bit about what the cannoneers were? So we're going to set the scene of the Lightfoot's big lawn, the New Haven Symphony playing, and then they begin the William Tell Overture.
Yeah.
And
there's a certain time when the cannons fire, and so we had a starting cannon, 10 gauge, just starting cannon, and we got about 10 of them, And so there was quite a roar when at the appropriate times.
Yeah.
And so, and there was one just beautiful evening. There were the sheep watching, and the moon came up over the horizon. It was really quite something. And, so in any event, we had those for a number of years, moving over to the Wakelman's estate over in Essex. But unfortunately, the weather began to close in on us.
I think you and I were both in quite a few years worth of meetings with Bob Ballard and his NOAA special forecasts and trying to.
Yeah. And unfortunately, because you had a couple lead days to set the thing up, it was very difficult to do it. And so at that time, the big barn had been built, so we could come into the barn, which is another big deal. And the New Haven Symphony got very fussy about playing outside in any event. And then they began becoming very pricey. And so we got younger fans, and we also began to get younger people involved, and lots of them.
And how did you notice, from that first picnic that you went to with Diane, how did you notice the change and the awareness in the community of High Hope?
Well, it got a lot bigger. You had a lot more participation, and we began to enlarge the number of students and writers we had. It's incredible. Thousands of hours of writing instruction that goes into this. And what the whole driving force is seeing the delight of the children as they look forward to their time once a week or whatever it is at High Hopes. It's really very gratifying.
And then speaking of driving forces, many of us did not have the pleasure of knowing Sisu Lit School, who are the founders of High Hopes. And is there anything in particular you'd like to share about them, or any stories?
Well, they were just a very warm, engaging couple. And they were very dynamic in their desire to get something going. This building here, for instance. And it takes a lot of organization, a lot of fundraising. And so they were very, very instrumental in getting this started to what it is today, and getting this property, which was huge.
And were you part of that group that made the transition into being able to have this property? And were you part of that? Were you part of that growth?
Well, I was only in that. I was getting back when I was on the board. I was on the board for about 10.5 years, and I remember when she wanted me to come on the board. If I came then, I could fill in for Claudia Weicker, who had moved away in the middle of her term. And so she said, in this way, you could get an extra 1.5 years on the board. Which, but it did. It went by very quickly. It was always fun.
And in those beginning years, where were you having your board meetings before
right here.
This was? But okay, so by the time you came on the board, this property had been built here on Town Street.
Yeah.
Okay. And then any other, I know you wanted to make sure that you mentioned certain people, but are there any other stories about some of those, founding couples or people that that you'd like to share?
Well, J.E. Davidson was very big into it, and she really made available her trails on Lord Hill, which was originally 90 acres or 100 acres. And so that was really quite it was a big draw, and she had a lot of their friends moved up from New Canaan and Greenwich and Fairfield County, basically, and they'd have them build a house on there, or they'd sell them a few acres and build houses on it. And so it was a fun group. They had picnic point where they go down and sing songs, and so it was very. They were a very lively couple, and so that was, and they were very big in starting this, as well as Grace Frank Hamilton and Stephen Salary Aubrey.
And Grace and Frank Hamilton, was it their property on Selden Lane and Limes that also they had some picnics? Was that a picnic spot as well?
That's true. Yeah.
Although by the time they were having the event there at Grace and Frank Hamilton's, it might be fair to call it the benefit party, rather. It had graduated from a picnic into
it was a lot more than a picnic.
Yeah.
That's where the concert were, and their daughter played the bagpipes, so that was kind of fun.
So you had cannons and bagpipes.
Yeah, right.
And I think I've seen photos of some of those first parties where what we call the placard holders that go around holding auction items, descriptions of auction items on a placard, that people would actually dress up in the theme of what the auction item was. And were you ever roped into that?
No.
Or did you manage to?
I was always a bartender.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, because that was also a big part, was that, I mean, like the organization as a whole, the benefit is really volunteer driven.
Oh, yeah.
As well. So there's always the gang of, 10 to 15 bartenders volunteering.
Yeah.
And you were able to miss the whole advent of the ice luges and the vodka at the bar.
Fortunately, yes. We were very simple, One guy asked for a Corona with a lime in it, and I said, "I'm sorry, we don't do mixed drinks."
And is there anything else that you'd like to touch on from your early involvement, or actually from any of the many years that you've been involved with High Hope?
Well, it was always a nice person who was head of the board, like when Tony Thurston had it. He was terrific. I mean, it was really fun, and it was never serious, and it was always very genial, and everybody was basically working for the kids,
Yeah.
And that made a huge difference.
And in the vein of board meetings never being very serious, I don't want to put you on the spot, but when I came on as a new board member, one of the things that really put me at ease and I appreciated was that at the end of every board meeting, you had a joke for us.
We tried to make them with horses.
Yes. So if you have a joke that you would like to tell to wrap up this interview, but I don't mean to put you on the spot if you don't.
Well, that does sort of put me on the spot.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure that all the jokes I told were really very, totally, shall we say, politically correct.
And you might not want them to go on your permanent record in this oral history.
Have it against me in court somewhere.
Right.
So,
well, thank you for chatting. I know This is great. And I know so you're my first interview. So if there's anything else you want to say or anything else you think I should ask you, please tell me.
No.
Okay.
It was very pleasant to be here, and thank you very much.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. I know. It's not a bad day to sit under a tree and talk about high good.
Boy, it sure is. It's really a nice time.